Meditators, today you will benefit from a deep dive into a crypto pioneer's view on the future of NFTs and the Metaverse. She shares why there is so much untapped value in gaming NFTs, and she even shares the story of how she introduced Beeple to NFTs well before his $69 million sale. Sharing her knowledge with us today is CoinArtist, CEO of the blockchain gaming company Blockade Games and crypto OG. She has been around in the crypto space since 2013 and is a true pioneer of the space. She is hugely knowledgeable on NFTs and one of the best people to discuss what the future might hold. For improved audio quality, remember to like and subscribe below. And to stay one with the markets, sign up and get 6 free market meditations newsletters a week. You'll find a link in the description below. I am your host, 𝐏𝐤𝐬𝐿, and this is the Market Meditations podcast. We chat with fascinating people from around the world to figure out how they've built wealth. Meditators, welcome to another episode of the Market Meditations podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. You all know that we've been getting more and more interested into the NFT space, and so has the rest of the world. And it's not a topic we've explored a lot, but I've managed to get on a guest who is deep into the space, and we're very fortunate to have on CoinArtist. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure, and I guess I'll start with what made you dive down the rabbit hole, whether it be the crypto rabbit hole or the NFT rabbit hole. What event triggered this all?
My story goes back quite a ways to 2013, getting our first Bitcoin, to mining with our GPUs. So I was a gamer, and I had a sweet GPU setup, and script coin mining took off. So mining Litecoin. And then all the other crazy coins that happened, trading these coins on 𝐉𝐸𝐻, if you remember 𝐉𝐸𝐻. And then that first bear, to then also like starting to leverage my creativity. So I was a fine artist. I was a curator of an art gallery director for a few years prior to 2013, a fine art degree. And so when I started to try to wrap my mind around what is a distributed network, these systems, decentralization, I, of course, started leaning on my creative mind and like being a vision forward type thinker about what does it look like? You know, how do I fit in? What does this mean? What does digital computer money mean? How can you just make money up? I don't think anyone had ever, right? Like we, as a gamer, understood WoW Gold or some other like in-game currency. So you had that concept, but the idea that this was a real like financial tool that could exist across the internet and people could trade without permission was pretty cool. So I took a private key and I turned it into visual data using techniques like steganography to encode them into both physical paintings to digital media, creating internet treasure hunts in which people could get little rewards along the way by collecting currency in that fashion or having a big prize. And sometimes it would all be self-contained information within one painting, or it would be spread out all over the internet, depending on the different campaigns we were doing. And so I did this. My first one was in 2014. It's called the Crypto Puzzle. So I get to say I invented something called crypto puzzles. And it was the most viral thread on Bitcoin Talk at the time. And so when I launched it as an artist, I just had never seen anything like this. It was a painting of 𝐉𝐸𝐻𝐻𝐿 and 𝐏𝐸𝐿𝐼𝐻, who were the founders of something called Dark Wallet. And Peter Todd was involved in that project too at the time, if you're familiar with who he is. And it was the idea that you could obfuscate where Bitcoin transactions were coming from using the wallet as a tool for that. I'm pretty sure the project died, but I loved the idea of like, okay, we're talking about obfuscating things and like, let's hide something then in this painting I'm making. Oh my gosh, I was blown away by the reception of it. So from there, we started launching additional campaigns, and I ended up doing that for 6 years for different blockchain projects. It was Bitcoin, and then I was doing things for Charlie Lee for Litecoin, and we worked with, Fluffy Pony for Monero, and doing fun marketing, like almost capture the flag sort of hacker events. So from there, I worked with the Decred project as head of marketing for a bit. We built up the community, got everybody really excited about learning about the tech. Decred is a very like technical project, so it was a good way to bring in this more deeper type of thinker into the community, which was very successful. But eventually I moved on and launched Blockade Games, which in 2018, which is we used to say blockchain game company, but now I'm starting to think I need to say more and more NFT game company, because that's what we do. We take NFT assets and we've created this open world economy around these NFTs, and it's free to play. So, anyways, that is in 2018, spent 3 years getting up to where we are today. We just launched the alpha a month ago. And our users, our daily active users are going up every day. So it's very exciting.
Wow, what a journey. I think this is one of you've been deeper into the crypto space than most guests we've had on for so long as well. And what I find fascinating is how you've combined both the technical and creative side. Have you always been good at both parts? Like, it's rare to find someone so deeply involved in both.
I think I've always loved creative tech. It's just I remember in art school seeing there was um, one of the displays was a robot arm that as you walked by, the robot arm would draw on depending on your movements. So movement based tracking, and I just loved that type of work. And so yeah, I mean I've always been interested, but it's I think anytime you get a creative and you throw them in the mix where they have the tools to build, they will, and they'll still start challenging definitions. We're seeing that now with the NFT space. You have certain people that are somewhat code literate, and then also those that maybe aren't so much, but they do have an understanding. And then what's the benefit of having the open source community is we pull together talent. So if you are very great at visual communication, you'll probably find an equally talented developer to support you and maybe where you're not as great. And then together you launch something new. We're seeing that is, I think I just saw like Kevin Bosch put out something with the NFT that's about artificial intelligence and the tokens that he's making. I haven't done a big deep dive yet, but I just know that there's people like that starting to explore. Okay, let's get more creative about these NFTs, and it's not just uploading a JPEG.
With every new discovery, it's like Pandora's box gets opened, and we have no idea what creative idea is going to come out of that. Back when this all started, did you at all envision NFTs coming, or your path leading here when you were making the puzzles, or did it just start with this new money idea is pretty awesome, I need to get more involved with this?
So, with the NFTs, is that what you're saying?
Like, back when this all started, did you see NFTs or DeFi or the space playing out the way it's played at all?
Yeah. So, okay, we launched the game company when CryptoKitties basically happened, because prior to that, I had been looking for a meta token type experience for the creative different use cases I wanted to explore. So meta token is that ability to attribute metadata to a token. Hadn't really happened yet. So when CryptoKitties is basically the first, well, CryptoPunks was the first, but then CryptoKitties was the first like big splash of adoption of tokens being able to carry these attributes and unique metadata attributes. So I guess with DeFi, what happened last year, for example, I took an NFT and I sharded it. So it was the CoinArtist NFT, which I basically was like, this is my brand, or it represents kind of, me as an NFT. So when I sharded it, and then I set up a marketplace of an ETH and coin, so the hashtag coin pair. Um, and then when people now buy this token off Uniswap, it gives them things like unlocking features in my Discord for private, it's token controlled access channels in which we communicate and we plan and scheme. It's a part of the Coin Syndicate, which is a syndicate within the Neon District universe. Neon District is the cyberpunk RPG game we're developing. Um, there's it's a tool for DeFi, so you can be a liquidity provider for coin, stake that token, and yield coin rewards and cred. As a cred is basically this underground secret currency that if you're a cred holder, then we know you're like a hardcore person, like part of our community. And we design for rewards for these types of users. We actually have one we'll be rolling out this next month. But Anyways, that whole intersection of DeFi and NFT started to happen last year, and I actually helped on a CoinDesk article about that intersection. A Niftex exchange had just taken off, so that they're ones that do some NFT sharding, and then you compete basically to own the shards, and then if no one does a counter bid, the last bid essentially wins, and it auto executes, and then everybody can turn in their shards for Ethereum, the Ethereum that was the payout to own the NFT. And that's just, we're just getting started. I mean, I'm talking about setting up a 𝐉𝐸 right now, which is a like limited liability autonomous organization. It's a DAO with a legal wrapper. That means that all of your participants in a DAO can have liability protection based on what the decisions the DAO takes as a group. So currently, if you don't have that, you're actually still subject to, like, you might think the DAO is protecting you, but it's not yet. Like, you really do need to have that legal language in the contracts. So working on that, but also you can have up to 99 participants of a 𝐉𝐸, making these vote holder decisions. And my immediate thought is that you should be NFTs, NFT keys to participate to vote. And then you can trade them if you don't want them anymore. I mean, this rabbit hole of what we can do with this, like DAOs and DeFi and NFTs, they're going to be incredible economies that essentially create a web that is the metaverse. So that's something I'm really focused on, is the development of the different areas that will become essentially the metaverse.
So, what is the advantage of having an NFT to make those decisions and give you those voting rights versus a regular token?
So the NFT, because it is unique to you, it can be like you can be like you're one of. So there's two things here. You can do an 1155 is a semi fungible NFT, and then the 721 is completely unique, but it can be still attributed to a series. That it's more interesting in the fact that you can give it attributes and metadata, essentially. Like with the ERC20s, they're just fungible, all one for one. But if you want, for example, one to have a more weight to it versus, let's say, the 99th key versus the first key, and also maybe in the voting rights, when you vote, maybe that first key has more weight when you vote, and maybe it's not just tied to holdings.
So with tokens, it would be linear relative to the number of tokens you have, but with NFTs, you can give unique attributes to each individual one.
Yep, and access. So like you could have, well, these 10 NFTQ holders can all congregate in a private room and make like the higher level decisions, and then they can trickle down. Yeah.
And where does that come into with regards to mixing with the DeFi space? So what other connections do we have between NFTs and DeFi that you think people aren't seeing right now?
So I think that the idea, have you paid attention to 𝐉𝐸𝐺 at all?
I have not, but please do enlighten us.
Okay. Well, so 𝐉𝐸𝐺 with 𝐴VE, they're little characters, 8-bit characters and ghosts. There's a like mini game around them. I hear it's a little bit complex at the moment, but it's still pretty new. But they have compound. So and I haven't actually played with it myself, but the ideas are that you can have things like compound and like um, and different DeFi inherited qualities to these NFTs and what they can do. So that, like, are yielding just by having the NFT and owning it over time. There's the different bonding curves you can associate to NFTs that make them more valuable. There's things like that. It's what we're doing with the game company that we're going to be rolling out here. Probably around the time that this goes live, will be the ability to have Neon District assets that we wrap. So we're going to be wrapping them, and then you'll be able to. They'll be paired on both Polygon. So Neon District is actually on a layer 2 called Polygon Matic Network, and then there's a Uniswap clone over there, and then Uniswap on Ethereum. So you'll have a pair of the wrapped Neon District Gen Z assets, which are rare, paired with coin. So they'll have different rarity pools. So there'll be common all the way up to legendary as separate pools. But what happens is when you take these shells, they're called shells, and you bond them, you fuse them with the existing Neon District assets right now. So they're just being integrated into the game currently. They are currently not a part of the ecosystem, but they're about to be. when they fuse, it changes the look of, it takes the look of the Gen Z assets, which are really cool looking, and applies them to the aesthetic of any asset you basically want. And when that happens, you also get a stat boost. So Neon District is very, very competitive, where little changes like that can actually determine the outcome of a match, depending on your strategy. But when you're doing that, you're burning the Gen Zero asset, essentially. So the supply is going down, and yet you have the pair, like the Uniswap pair. So, and if you're an LP provider for these pairs and you have that in your wallet, either your Ethereum wallet or your Polygon wallet, the game app reads your wallet and you'll be mining the in-game currency. And then if you also have cred, you'll be getting a bonus. So you'll be a bonus for mining the Neon, which the Neon you funnel into all your NFTs. So you have to, as a player, if you're a Gen Zero holder, weigh, is it more valuable to apply this to an asset I have on my characters and compete because you're earning Neon by winning that way? Or is it more valuable to be an LP provider and be mining your Neon? Or is it more valuable to have the NFT that has the Gen Zero, attributes to it versus, the LP token? So I love it because I've already went and I was so excited when we just made this decision. I dropped over 20 ETH of my personal money on accumulating more of these Gen Zero assets just because I can't wait. I understand that the psychology of it is going to just be really hard and difficult for me as a player. So I don't know if any of that made sense to you, but just imagine very cool looking cyberpunk characters that you've put together and composed and then leveled up, and then you get to basically attach or change the look of, and they become like just the most sick looking cyberpunk characters in the game. How are you not going to want to do that?
I love the one-line summary of the huge technical explanation of the tokenomics and the strategy going behind the NFTs to make sure they accrue value and grow, which I think is awesome. Can we dive into the actual game a little bit? So you said it's a cyberpunk game, RPG, I believe.
Yes.
What's the format? I think I saw a trailer. It looks turn-based.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the actual game?
It's very old school, like Final Fantasy VII experience where it's turn based, and then it's right now, we have active PvP as a feature to kind of like go train up your teams to experience what's going to make a good team or not. But honestly, the core game at the moment is through a passive PvP. So if you want the breakdown of how this works, we launched to start with. While we do have campaigns, like 2 campaigns worth of content to release, that's PvE, player versus environment. So that kind of like Final Fantasy loop where you're navigating a world and having these experiences. What we started with, since we've only been live for a few weeks, is that way to onboard so you can have no crypto at all. And you don't even need to download a wallet because it has a custodial wallet option just to start. So you can just start playing.
I can play without any money.
Yeah. Yes, totally free to play, and you don't have any gas fees. So designed no gas fees. I can
How
get
do
more
I
into that in a
compete
bit.
with you, who has 20 ETH going into the game?
Well, you wouldn't. So you start at
Okay.
your own rank, and you work your way up into your different tiers and levels.
Nice.
By earning Neon, and then you can keep working towards building up. I mean, yes, it has the free to play model where, okay, well, I want to skip some of those challenges and I'm going to dump a bunch of ETH and then make a bunch of stuff. But like, it's not power. The power ladder isn't necessarily extremely vertical. It's wide in the way that Magic the Gathering is wide. So, for example, you could maybe, yes, acquire a Black Lotus, but perhaps, which is one of the most valuable cards in Magic the Gathering, and rare, but maybe you don't know when is the right time to play it. So you could have an incredible deck, just like in Neon District, you can have an incredible deck and a inventory. But if you don't really know how to combine them, how to level them, and then how to take the best team up against a different team, it doesn't matter. So it's very deeply strategic. That's why making it free to play is great, because it's more inclusive and fun for everybody. So anyways, the way that Neon Pizza, we call Neon Pizza. If you've read Snow Crash, and you're familiar with the Deliberator, that's a big inspiration here. And the whole world is hugely inspired by Snow Crash. Anyways, you go on these pizza deliveries. You have a team, 4 characters. Each character consists of basically 5 composed NFTs. creates one character. You have 4 of them that create your team.
Right.
And as you level, so characters start basically, and gear and everything starts at a level 0. And you level them, and as you level them, each level you get to choose essentially a card. So it plays like an RPG game-wise, but it has a deck building component to it. So when you essentially you've done, let's say you've leveled completely one of your characters, then that character has 20 cards that when they're fully composed with their gear, weapon, and the character themselves, 20 cards. And so as a group, they have 80 cards. And as you're taking your turns, you pull at random 3 cards from that character's deck that you can play.
What card game would you compare it to? Current existing card game most closely?
I would say, I don't. It's a pretty unique model.
Nice.
Slay the Spire, maybe Slay the Spire.
I have not heard of that, and I'm reasonably familiar. I used to be hardcore into Yu-Gi-Oh, for competitive Yu-Gi-Oh playing, so I was hoping I'd maybe know the card game.
Yeah, so Slay the Spire has a deck building component to it and character in an RPG sort of kind of turn-based faction. I'd say that's probably the closest. But so that's kind of the mechanic, I guess, as how you're playing. So there's some luck. There's a random roll when you're leveling them. You could potentially pull certain high level cards, but it's a chance of. So anyways, yeah, that's kind of how it works at the moment. So wait, hold on. You're delivering pizzas, and you have a shift, an 8-hour shift that you take your characters on. Now your shift or your characters are collecting neon tips. And as they're collecting neon tips, making the deliveries, there's another category here of teams called the ambushers. So you can play as both at the same time. You can have multiple teams playing as both sides. But an ambushing team can ambush your pizza delivery team and steal your tips. And they can do this after every single delivery you make during your shift. The trick for the delivery team is to go and to what's called fence, which means to bank your tips as you go. Because if you do it after every delivery, then you're not going to have them stolen. If you don't, then every time you get ambushed, you lose 50% of your neon. So then you have the ambushing teams then that when they take your neon, they're holding it. But for as long as they're holding it and they don't fence it and bank it, then who were just ambushed, you can put out a hit contract on that team, which goes out to everybody. And everybody can then honor that hit contract, and they share if they win, because the only way to get the neon back is to win and beat the other team.
Right.
Then you get some of your neon back, and then they get to keep some too.
It sounds like there's a lot of mechanics to this game and a lot of ways you can play it, a little something for everyone. And it makes me wonder, because there's so many intricacies you've put into the game based off of creative innovation around this technology. Do you think that is enough to make it so the biggest games integrating blockchain technology in the future are going to be the native ones like what you're building? Or are they going to be something like, say, League of Legends starts putting their skins into NFT format and integrating those into their existing large brand?
So, a lot of times games really need to be designed for an open economy. If you look at the Diablo 3 auction house model, where the vertical was the power vertical, it was too vertical, as opposed to the power being designed for horizontal distribution.
Could you explain that? Sorry, vertical versus horizontal.
It means that, let's say you have a hammer, and that hammer, man, it hits like 100 and it's super powerful. Anyone that has that hammer, like, your SOL, right? Versus like, okay, you have a screwdriver, and that screwdriver you could use at a very specific time, and it maybe doesn't have huge power, but it's highly effective in some sort of outcome that you wanted. So that's more of a horizontal design, whereas like the other is very power based. Like you want to get as powerful as possible.
So Dark Souls would be very horizontal, whereas Diablo is very vertical. Understood.
And actually, that's hilarious, because our game designer is like the #2 best Dark Souls player in the world.
That is awesome. I used to love that game.
Yeah, so he's hardcore. He looks like a pirate too. And so so actually those skins like Fortnite and these brands, they don't really need to. I mean, their sales are crazy already. They're doing licensing with other big partners. They're having special skins. And another thing is that when you open up with yourself, with when you have licensing, is let's say that license ends. What does that mean for something that your people are selling and trading in these open ecosystems in the future? Um, I think that you're going to have major brands get involved into the our space in different angles. I think like decentralized identities are a big thing for traditional game companies and something they're actively working on. But as far as monetization and their monetization models and having closed gardens, I think they just have such an edge on that. Really think that the adoption here we're going to see with the open ecosystems and the metaverse is going to be all the little creative builders, like the independent people that have a hard time with user acquisition, because this opens up opportunities and channels to tap into lots of different users and target them pretty easily based on their user behavior with their different assets and what they have. You can kind of see what they're actively, what kind of game they're into by what are they collecting. You can even see if they're even like playing these games, because there's two different types of users right now. There's the whale who doesn't play the games, is just a collector, and then there's the gamer that is actually in it to play and have fun. The gamer part is actually a much smaller user base at the moment, but that's the one where like Neon District is really focused on growing out. But you still do need to provide those fun opportunities for whales to participate. It's just like in the Neon District model, it requires you to play to actually create the value. That's literally the model. So will basically whales just collect really valuable things that users make, or will they be willing to come in and like do the work themselves?
Do you think, because that's a really profound point right there, the two elements being the whales and the gamers, do you think there is a place where companies can focus on just one, or the ones that are going to really grow and make it long term, or the ones that make it an experience for both, or even just the gamers?
Well, that's the thing. I think so. Like Neon District is really focused on the gamers. You can't get rid of whales, right? You want to include them because they are your higher spenders. But currently, blockchain games. This is where a lot of people don't believe in blockchain games yet or NFT games yet, is because there's such a paywall to participate for most of them, and then also they're not fun for the new user. You're walking into this power like driven ecosystem where a new user can't just start participating and having fun unless they have really powerful stuff. So then, like, if it's not exciting and fun to participate, then why would I be doing it? I've talked to a few users that Axie Infinity is pretty fun for them, even starting out at an entry point. But there's not very many blockchain games that are designed this way. So Decentraland, CryptoVoxels, these open worlds, Sandbox, they the thing is that they don't have like inherent games to them. They're relying on the user to build the experience to have high user retention. So people that want to come back and returning to the game. But honestly, you have to develop these really strong, robust ecosystems and open economies and high retention to drive users to come back or want to play and participate and have fun. And if games don't have that, then you're asking users to do your biggest heavy lifting in these open worlds. Um, so yeah, I guess like in the era of NFT collecting and people wanting to show off what they have, that's what that model still works okay because you can walk into these virtual worlds and kind of show off what you have, build your castle, put all your stuff in it. But at the end of the day, like if there's not a high amount of users coming through, is that still exciting? Right? Like, so yeah, there's a lot of questions here and things that we're all just are hypothetical still.
It's collecting stuff and showing them off. Like you said, it's not going to be interesting if you've got no one to show it off to, if that is the reason you're playing the game. So unless, now this is something, it's been mentioned a few times, I don't fully understand what it means besides having watched the movie and not read the book of Ready Player One. Could you explain the metaverse? Because the reason it came to mind is you said someone to show it off to, but I mean, if you're in one metaverse, which I don't understand, I'm hoping it's just one big video game universe is how I envision it. I mean, you can show off to anyone whatever game you have assets in.
So you definitely have to read the book. Like it would take you maybe a day and a half. It's such a fast read, and it's so different from the movie. So one of the things about the book is they couldn't get the IP licensing for basically everything that's in the book. So all the challenges and what you read about, like none of the challenges and story is the same in the movie. Totally different stories. And one thing that's neat about that, that metaverse is it is true. Like you have all these different worlds or like parallel worlds, and you can enter and exit out of all of them simultaneously. Um, I mean, we are years away from there being this sort of standardization of having that kind of capability and lining up these different experiences. I think we're going to start playing around, and we already are prototyping. I mean, like Neon District has a blade that if you have this asset, it is another, like it's represented differently in two different games simultaneously, and all you have to do is have it in your wallet. Um, so yeah, like for example, if you have this blade, and when you're in the spaceship game, you have a special hologram that's displayed over your spaceship. And in the other game, you get a special like neon. It's a race car game, and if you have just that blade, then your race car, a specific type of race car, has a neon glow underneath of it. And that's the only way to get those features. So those little Easter eggs. And we'll continue to prototype in these different ways. But as far as like having to take one asset and needs to be a specific file type for a certain game that you could then in any game be able to use that asset or interact with it and it be supported widely, means that it needs to have every single file type for whatever that game is designed for. 3D world versus 2D world versus like you name it, and the textures and everything, and then also like the licensing and IP. So the requirements of supporting a game asset across multiple different types of game universes, and with them all having different technical requirements and artistic requirements, is a lot of work. You will probably have third-party companies start up that will do just that work. So if there's high-end asset, let's say CryptoPunks are very valuable, and because of that, you might have a demand for them to be represented across multiple different games in some capacity, and the user base to drive that sort of demand. And because there is such a great group there of users that obviously are financially capable, game companies might be like, oh, okay, maybe we'll do that extra work to support these different file types as well. But it's not necessary. Like if you look at NBA Top Shots, you're not going to see somebody like NBA Top Shots who is wildly successful on their own network with their own user base that they're targeting NBA fans. They've even obfuscated completely away, basically as much as they can, the blockchain and any mechanics that are alien to someone that is not familiar. So it's definitely you can navigate the internet. You can probably figure out NBA Top Shots. Things are listed in dollars. You understand that you can trade them and that you can be earning money. You understand that you can do wire transfers. And so why would they want, they're so successful right now. Why would they even spend any of the technical debt that would be required to do something with a partner unless it was directly in line with their user base and like the focus of what they're doing? You'll see this also with like, for example, so Opensea is one of the most successful marketplaces. One of the reasons why, like NFT marketplaces, and they are the largest. They do all the secondary trading happens basically on Opensea. Um, the reason that they got there was because they stayed very focused on that mission. They could have kind of pivoted to include lots of different features or support or, things that could have been that they were receiving demand for from the user. But if it didn't fall into the line of we are a marketplace, our goal is to have the most secondary sale like transaction volume. And if something fell outside of that mission, they didn't do it. And that's what you're going to see, that same decision making with NBA Top Shots, and you're going to see that like with most games, because it's too technically difficult to pivot like that. But the capabilities of an NFT having that function is there. It's true. So you're probably going to see third party companies spin up to do that work and then make proposals to be a bridge between two different game companies.
There is also the argument that it's more profitable to not allow that integration. I mean, taking a look at Apple and their business model, they deliberately keep users within their world, and could see a push in that direction, for example, with NBA Top Shots.
Well, I think the more, so not necessarily true. So, for example, NBA Top Shots, you have third-party developers building like fantasy league experiences out, so you can have your different collection, like 5 characters. You submit them as a lineup, essentially. So all NBA Top Shots did was make the ability to have a lineup, and that lineup is then somewhat transferable, or at least there's a reference point that you can look at the lineup. Um, I think that you will have third party development happening where what it does is adds additional utility. So anytime, for example, if you have something that is a 2-in-1 or a 3-in-1 as a user, and like, oh, my value here is like way more profitable, and then you have the secondary sales. So you're taking the percentage of the fee on all those secondary sales as a game company. That's something that I think actually I heard that isn't Apple, they're making their own crypto, I think.
I am not familiar with them making their own crypto yet, but it would not surprise me.
I'm pretty sure they are. I'm pretty sure I've heard that. So I think that the reason is like, yeah, anytime they do something, they want to own the whole everything, all their product.
Yeah.
But like I said, we're competing. What you're seeing is all of these creatives throw away platforms that have basically tied their hands together as far as being the ones that have been successfully monetizing the work. You're seeing artists like 𝐉𝐨𝐬𝐬, RAC, like huge musical artists. So I just interviewed 𝐏𝐬𝐬𝐭 a couple days ago about their album drop, and these artists are monetizing directly consumer to content creator. And with that happening, you're going to have basically almost a walled garden that's created like with of indie creators, of artists and creatives, and people that don't want these platforms to come in and take like the huge cuts that they were like 70% of their or more of their sales. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep up and they can compete with that sort of that metaverse world building ecosystem. It's going to be interesting. I mean, it's already on fire. I don't know these conversations these record labels must be having right now about how are they going to stay relevant.
I mean, similar to what the banks are having right now, is in a really good analogy, which I heard about what DeFi is doing to the banks. It's like the bankers still hold a giant block of cheese, but there's these little mice nibbling around it. And at first you don't notice it, but eventually it's all going to be gone.
Yeah, I don't. It's interesting. Well, so Bitcoin is now on not only Tesla's cap table, but also Apple's, like 2.5 billion on Apple, and who else is going to put Bitcoin on their cap table? That's just the beginning of people. It's like, oh, we need to participate and somehow be a part of this because it's this train or ship is it's sailing, you know. So either they're going to get on board or they're not. And I don't know when this slows down. I don't know if it does slow down. I know that yesterday there were some Taco Bell NFTs that happened and sold out. And I know like
I mean, you saw Beeple today, I hope, with 69 million sale.
I have a funny story about this actually.
I would love to
So
hear that funny story.
the CTO of Opensea, his name is Alex Atala, and he and I were pretty good friends. Back in September last year, he sends me a Beeple daily, and it's something grotesque. I don't know if you're familiar with Beeple's work, but it's not always like settling. It can be very jarring at times. This one I think is like watermelon sugar high was the one, and it's like this dead grotesque body in a bathtub, and he's like, oh, like got tubes coming out of him, and it's going into watermelons, and it looks like a horror, like from a horror
Yeah.
game, like Silent Hill, and I was like, gross. Anyways, a month later, so now I'm tracking him on Instagram because of this conversation. A month later, I noticed he puts out Into the Ether, and it's the Ethereum piece. It's not an NFT; it's just a painting. And I was like, went right to my friend Alex. Was like, oh my god. And so I hit him up on. I have kind of a bigger social following on Twitter, so I try to reach out to him and say, hey, do you know about NFTs? And Alex Atala, in the meantime, is taking down all these copies that are coming in through OpenSea because people are trying to, monetize this Ethereum art piece. And he has to take him down. And he's like, hey, and I was like, oh, how do you know it's not the real one? And he was saying, well, until I get like confirmation somewhere, I wish I could get in contact with him. So we both like contact him on all these different channels that we can. We're trying to like reach out to him to see if he is trying to put one up, and then also does he know about NFTs? Not soon after, like long after that, they start communicating and they get on the phone, and Alex tells him all about NFTs. And so that conversation from October about this and like where if we had known what would transpire from that point to him today having a $69 million sale on his like everyday it was an everyday collection I believe of some sort on Christie's. So that was October. Like we're in March, like that's not that much time that has passed that this happened. So it's just pretty wild.
That is wild to the point where that random event had a pivotal role in the shift we've seen right now, possibly accelerated it by months. That's an incredible story. Not to
Yeah.
mention your own contributions as well. Just yeah, we're blessed to have you on the podcast, an actual pioneer of the NFT movement right now. You're even, and I think I saw this, and I'm not sure I understood it. You're integrating the NFTs into physical items and merchandise as well, aren't you?
Working on that. That's a big vision. But yeah, and if you I mean, when you talk about Ready Player One, this is something that's not even really laid out in that book, but there's this like concept called mirror worlds. What that means is you could have an item that exists in physical space that is mirrored in digital space. What happens to one in one space is mirrored in the other. So when you think about game assets and having stats and metadata, if you have a physical jacket. Let's imagine it's Neon District brand and it's couture and there's like one, we've done a special auction and it has a cold storage device that holds the NFT that's with it. It has Bluetooth and like location tracking as a part of it. So that already exists actually. All these things I'm talking about already exist. It's just a matter of like putting them together now. So you have this and you have an augmented reality experience now that you have this NFT in this jacket. And I walk into a space that is now, let's say I'm like, Pokemon towers in Pokemon Go.
Yes.
All right, so let's say I enter some sort of space now where I'm in a combat arena. And I can have like through my phone, I can see environmental objects coming at me, like kind of defending my space in real time. I could take damage on my jacket, and that damage is then mirrored on my digital version that's online of my jacket for my game character. I could also level up in reality and then level up over there. The cool gamifications that we can do with the blending of these two worlds. So earlier I talked about my crypto puzzles background and like what's known as alternate reality games. That's kind of that area of what I had done previously. We're taking that idea and like really giving it legs, and not only that but value. So the fact that these NFTs and what you do with them, you are not like when we talk about role playing games, you're basically becoming a living action figure for these experiences, and then you can realize that value too online with things you do with your NFTs. And it's all the same NFT, right? So like think about fashion, like couture, like runway, and you have this model going down the runway and you could be throwing fireballs at her in real time off your phone and like seeing it affect her, what she's wearing. And it can have weird skins that can affect what you look like your actual aesthetics and filters with the gear as well. um no, I mean, like, I'm so excited for
I,
the things we can
I've
do.
got goosebumps listening to that right now. It's that exciting. And from crypto puzzles, like from, oh, this Bitcoin online money is cool, to we can integrate augmented reality clothing into real life that mixes and synergizes with the game. Is that the vision you have for the long term future of the games you're building?
Absolutely. Actually, so have you heard of the code Miko?
Again,
She's a
no.
she's a virtual influencer. And so if you were to look into that, you'll see really quickly that a lot of these developments are already happening. NFTs are just going to become like a backbone in which allows these things to be transferable and like as a way to monetize them and trade and even have better engagement with your fans and influencers and content creators. Like a lot of the tech's already there. So she has a suit that is wireless. And through the Unreal Engine, while she's streaming, so if I was streaming right now, I could have a skin on me that turns me into something virtual and an outfit, like a some sort of cosplay outfit. And she does this, she demos this. If you go to her Twitter, it's like the code and Miko's MIKO. And she can hit a button and it changes her whole look on the fly as she's interacting. And she has words going across her virtual self that is actually the input of her everybody watching. So they're typing messages and it's being streamed across her chest. Um, and she demos in her like physical living room space wearing the suit as her virtual self. Well, no, as a suit. So she has it displayed mirror wise. So it has like her virtual self being displayed and then her physical self like with the suit on. And you can see the two different realms. One also renders her entire environment out virtually um, as digital assets. And she shows that she destroys basically by punching something like her wall. It actually destroys the wall in the virtual space. So it's like
It's
like
already
where
happening. I'm just
it's already
unaware.
happening. And yeah, it's just there's so many like development paths that are happening exponentially at the moment, and it's a matter, like I said, bridging them together.
When it comes to cryptocurrency, there's often things like regulation, which can be blockades to adoption. Uh, when it comes to the NFT space and the things you're talking about, it's less clear to me. What things do you see stopping us moving forward and getting to these exciting new destinations?
Honestly, games are pretty safe. NFTs, in the way that we think about, if you deal with them in the way a traditional game company is dealing with them, they're pretty safe. We don't have an in-game ERC20 token, so we have designed very much to stay like outside of that space. And NFTs being a commodity and the way that they're used, um, as far as regulations goes, we're good. But the minute, like on the coin side, like with my social token, I am now setting, I told you earlier, setting up a 𝐉𝐸, and that's for protection. And then because I didn't necessarily expect when I launched it over the summer it to be as successful. So we're looking at it and we're going, oh my God, we got to do something because it's going to be really successful. So we're like now putting in all these different measures for legal protections, and also a way for it to scale through an autonomous organization. But also then when you start thinking about DeFi, so we've learned that building the staking protocol as a software. So Coin now will have a Delaware LLC, and we are a software company building the protocol for the staking mechanic. But there has to be a third party service provider who is then building and responsible for the interface in which people are interacting with the protocol. And it shouldn't be the two same entities, because you don't want to be, the minute you cross over into being like an investment, there's a word for it, but someone that's facilitating like investment and directly, it puts you at risk. So you have to separate those things out. But it doesn't. It's just a matter of the like knowing. So if you're experimenting, you just have to be careful. Be very clear in your communications about what you're intending to do, and it's not. Make sure that people realize you are not promising an investment return. If you are just like, if you're a content creator that's going to launch a social token, it is better to do, for example, start with the 𝐉𝐸 and all of these pieces in place, because doing it retroactively is harder. Can be done, but yeah, I guess like it's tough to not just, because the tools, it's so easy to just push go right now, like, and then think later, ask permission later. I don't know what is the better answer, because you get to participate in adoption faster versus the fees and the hangups of anything legal that you have to sort through and figure out. But starting out with that figure out first means you're going to be on a better, clear path for later. It's kind of like with trading, like for example, you don't want to take capital gains if you don't have to. If you realized you could hold for just a year, and that's just a simple rule, and you know what I mean, like, yeah, you have to. It's really good if you can have an awareness. There's someone to track, Aaron Wright from Open Law, worth following his work. He's also working on the ability to spin up LLCs and businesses out of like a smart contract suite, through, what is it, the Moloch. He's got a Moloch DAO. So there's, and he's the same group behind the Flamingo DAO, which has a while. So yeah, it's worth learning and diving into these particular rabbit holes if you're interested at all at participating on an entrepreneurial level.
One point I just want to make before I do ask the question is, there's also the element of pushing go, is because artists have been really dealt a pretty bad hand for so long, and finally there's this opportunity where they can get their paycheck, when they can get rewarded for their work, and a lot of them are diving headfirst, sacrificing brand, but really it's so easy to empathize with.
So yes, when it comes to making NFTs, I don't think there should be anything holding you back from going for it, as long as you are the sole owner of the work, um, and what you're making. If you're truly the content creator, in this case, if you're on OpenSea, so I suggest OpenSea for most people, because it is meant for and to be as inclusive as possible. You might, if you don't have a means to already get visibility for yourself, though, you'll find that it's maybe challenging to drive people to your work. But just for learning purposes, if you set up a collection, it can cost, currently they're fixing this, so it won't be this way soon in the near future, maybe by the time this comes out, actually, but it costs $150 to $200 to set up your own collection. And they have something what they refer to as lazy minting, which means after you get past that registration point, you can make as many NFTs as you would like at no cost. And then the buyer, whoever buys the work, is the one that pays the gas minting fee, because that's actually while everything is on chain and has on chain activity and history, the actual minting of the NFT occurs at that moment. So that's what I recommend. And that way you can so if you're willing to pay $200, then you can just go and play and experiment. There's projects to watch like Async Art, it's ETH Art Block or Art Block ETH, Beyond NFT. There's a lot of projects working on programmable layers or programmable components of NFTs. So it's not just uploading a file, but it's also like a more dynamic experience about what you can do with NFTs.
Do you actively invest in any of these projects?
I'll buy things I like, but not from an investor standpoint. I'm too busy with my work and stuff to be focused on an investment front for like NFTs themselves. I am moving into a fund though, like I'll be a GP of a metaverse focused fund that we will be invested. So I have a lot of inbound of developers who come to me. So instead of like maybe investing in their NFTs, we'll help seed their company. And then incubate. So there's an incubator program coming up. Yeah, that's more of my angle, just because I understand development more than I'm going to speculate on what is going to be something I can flip.
And beyond the flip, I mean, you mentioned yourself, you suspect there are going to be third-party companies coming in that can add tremendous value into the NFT space. They're going to be, you can see, because you're so engaged, all the different components that are going to be required and potentially make more sophisticated bets than the average person.
Exactly. So if you're actually developing or shipping, that's why I suggest people to make NFTs and just start, because when you do that, you start to see these little holes of where you're like, oh, somebody needs to make a business for that right there. And one of those things is, like I'm talking about Opensea and being more visible, there's going to be like talent management groups that take these types of individuals with collections that will help you. So you don't just need to wait for Opensea or to get onto Nifty Gateway or these other platforms that are about doing drops. You'll have more drops as a service promoters that will come in and help elevate, but they're going to take it probably a percentage of your sales or need upfront payment. But there's going to be businesses, and if you want, you should start one. Like you should go do that, and you're going to be aware of these holes that exist.
That is a fantastic idea for any entrepreneur listening to this program right now, to start their own third-party services to help artists get found, get attention, get on these platforms, maybe provide them with initial funding. There's so much opportunity in the new space. And CoinArtist, I've taken up an hour of your time. This episode is definitely on the longer end, but there's so many different topics and it's been so interesting. I've got a whole bunch of stuff written down that I'm going to look further into that you've mentioned. Thank you so much for your time. Before we wrap up this episode, is there anything you'd like to leave our audience with?
I would say be very careful in the hype. A lot of people are buying almost like marketing hype with a lot of these NFTs, and just make sure that you at some level understand what you're doing or you research before you go all in the hopes that it's going to make you a lot of money. I think the slow growth model of creating value over time is a more like promising one than hoping that you're just going to get rich quick. And even though crypto seems like conducive to getting rich quick, it's and good luck, like all for you if that happens for you. But if you really want to build something valuable and participate, which this space is going to be here, like sure it's a bull market right now, but I've lived through like 3 different bear markets now and I'm still here. so just stay centered and don't lose more than you can afford to lose.
I think that's a fantastic point to leave our audience with. It's something which can't really be said enough, that even if you do get rich quick, I mean, so many people have made 7, 8 figures, 9 figures even this bull market, and they're not any happier. They're probably some of the most depressed people I know, because they're lovely people, but money alone isn't really going to be the answer in most cases, provided you have your base needs. Building something amazing, that's going to give life meaning. So CoinArtist, I hope you do continue to build amazing stuff in the space. Thank you so much for your time again. Meditators, that is everything for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us. This was a fascinating episode that really helped me understand the metaverse and what the NFT space might look like in the future. The NFT space is exploding and it has major implications for the future of crypto. To stay up to date with everything going on, me and my team of researchers write a newsletter 6 times a week. This is Market Meditations. Make sure to subscribe. All you have to do is go to 𝐏𝐸𝐻𝑎𝐾.substack.com. We have now spoken to a number of guests in the NFT space, from how to invest to what the future might look like. Next episode, we shift from NFTs to entrepreneurship and Bitcoin with none other than Dan Held, who's managed to have successful exits to the likes of Kraken, Airbnb, and blockchain.com. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Market Meditations podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and would like us to continue bringing on fascinating people from across the world, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you'd like to listen to these podcasts, and share the episode with a friend.